Okay, here we are with the last episode of season 2. We really want to thank you guys for, sticking with us, listening to us. And we're just so appreciative of everyone for doing that. And we want to say, if you want to see more of this, which we want to keep creating more, then please make sure, you subscribe to our Instagram, or no, you follow on Instagram. What, Lexi?
Yeah,
You're
follow on
younger. What do you
Insta,
do? You follow
subscribe
on
to
Insta.
YouTube, subscribe to our newsletter, check out our website. All of those things will help to keep this going.
Yes, absolutely. And we will be back in September and October for season 3. And we want to make sure there's season 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't know. We just want lots of seasons. And we're going out with a bang because we're going out with Paige Figi, who, and do you believe in miracles, which is our Ted Lasso quote for
Just
this
perfect
episode,
for
which
this.
could not be even better. And Lexi, you've been a fangirl of Paige for a long time.
Yes.
Because you live in Colorado, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, she's definitely up there for me. So when we, got that contact, I was kind of like, holy shit, this is actually happening. Oh my God. And I got to see her and Trayvon at the Epilepsy 5K a few days ago in Colorado. And just the amount of people that showed up at, her tent and the family that she had, everyone you could tell was just so connected and just felt so at home. It was so cool to see. And I just kind of sat back and watched and I was like, wow, this woman is special for many reasons. But
right.
yeah.
I mean, just the amount of change she has created as an individual, and then bringing the right people in. Like you said, just you saw her surrounded by great people. I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
But it would be a little insufficient to say that what Paige has done is a miracle, because really it was a lot of hard work of what Paige did, and God,
she's still putting in hard work for it, man, even years later.
Absolutely. God, just, we could not fangirl harder out on Paige, and we're really excited for you guys to listen to this. Before we do, though, we want to have our epilepsy fave of the week and our epilepsy fan of the week. Our fave of the week, we started with her, we're ending with her, is Jessica Smith. She is the creator of the website livingwellwithepilepsy.com. It's a great way to connect to other people's stories. It's where people share their stories about epilepsy. So kind of in the interim between our seasons, you can have, you can always go to that website, livingwellwithepilepsy.com, and check out how other people have shared and other tips and tricks. And I think Jessica's even added a epilepsy seizure guide for free, and just resources. Wow. So it's just really good stuff there. Really good stuff. And then our fan of the week is Sandra, right? Yes. Sandra took the time to leave a comment on our YouTube, on one of our episodes on our YouTube page for barbecue sauce with John Bramblett. And she said, "Love you guys. Thank you for doing your podcast. It really helps me deal with my own journey." Sandra, we love you too. We are so appreciative, not only for you listening, but also that you took the time to tell us. Just means a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And, we just hope this continues to help with your journey. And now we've got our sponsors to thank.
Yes. I know.
We really want to put out a big, huge thank you. I feel like this is an Oscar speech now. I feel like I'm being
thank you for supporting us for another season.
Yeah. Yes.
How do you sum that up?
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. Neurelis and SK Life Science. Oh, thank you for just being a part of our family and our epilepsy community, and really making sure that we are able to keep doing this, and the more people that we see are positively impacted by it, the more it's like, this needs to keep happening. So just big thank you. Okay, guys, and without further ado, here's Do You Believe in Miracles with Paige Figi. Hey guys, welcome to What the F. We are so excited about our guest today, Paige Figi. Paige, thank you for being here. Just if you need a little bit of background on Paige, she has been an epilepsy advocate in a huge way for a long time, specifically in the CBD medical marijuana, which I know Paige will tell me the correct version to say in a second. And you might have seen Paige on CNN. She's currently working on The Hill, but your story, Paige, started so much earlier than that, and there's still work to be done. I think a lot of people don't realize that, like I thought CBD is illegal now. What's the issue? And the work you're doing is so amazing, and we really want to get to that. But before we do, we'd love to hear, just like the background. But first of all, thank you for being here. We are so stoked to have you.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, if you wouldn't mind, kind of sharing what started this advocacy, this form of advocacy for you, and where and what did you do?
Sure. So my whole journey down the CBD, and it's hemp, and that's, people conflate it with cannabis or marijuana, but it is a hemp extract. It's cannabidiol. My journey with this as an advocate was out of necessity. I had a child, Charlotte, with an untreatable form of epilepsy, with intractable epilepsy. So you're well familiar with this topic. Not everyone is captured by pharmaceutical, and many are. Many people with epilepsy have a treatable option with she has Dravet syndrome, and so Dravet syndrome is not treatable by typical or any pharmaceuticals, and you have to try them all. So Charlotte was 4 years old when we really reached the end of our rope with medical choices. So her seizures were just it was like a tragic situation. She was seizing every half hour for about a half an hour. Some of her seizures were 4.5 hours long. So each seizure is considered status. So they're longer than 20-minute tonic-clonic seizure, or any kind, I believe, is a status epilepticus. She was on multiple pharmaceuticals. None were working. As you know, there's a lot of side effects with each of these. Seizures are a side effect of every seizure drug.
Yep. Isn't that the weirdest thing?
Well, and then when you're on some of the seizure drug, and I'm not I don't want to get too anti-pharmaceutical, but again,
not just how it is.
Yeah.
And it's that's specific, but sometimes they're those outliers. So my journey to find another treatment option is how I came into hemp extract, because she was an outlier. She was not captured by Western medicine. So she was, at the time, end of life. She was in hospice at home on life support. And I forget how many medications she was on. That was 13 years ago. And and we probably had, we don't know how much longer we had with her, but we signed a do not resuscitate, and just watched her and just gave her life support, gave her oxygen. I fed her through a surgical feeding tube, and just, we knew the end was near. And I had nothing left. I always had something in the cupboard, her next drug, and I just had nothing left to try, unless I wanted to go back through a failed drug choice.
Right.
And so we just
that's so I can't imagine, Paige. I just can't imagine.
You don't want to say you give up, but you're just you put your trust into your doctor, and they only have so many tools. So I was talking to a lot of people. Obviously, you make connections in this world and discuss things, and you trust your doctor and you use your doctor, but there's all kinds of other things you're dealing with epilepsy. Like we said, side effects, or just side effects of the syndrome. And so the parents talk, and we were talking, and I was looking into research out of Israel. They were using a hemp extract called cannabidiol. We didn't call it CBD back then. And it was going to be, and is, the next new anti-seizure drug. So they were using rats and studying genetically modified rats who had seizures, and it was stopping their epilepsy, and it was just not legal. In America at the time, in Colorado, where I live, it was a Schedule I substance in this country. It was on the Controlled Substances Act and lumped in with marijuana.
Which is kind of crazy to think about now.
Yeah.
Just because of where we are now. I think in a lot of states anyway. It's just kind of like, wait, what? That
Mhm.
was
Look at the drugs we're using to treat epilepsy. There's some serious medications
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't unfamiliar with using a real controversial or powerful drug.
Mhm.
This was just the next thing that they were
Mhm.
researching, and I'm like, well, I live in Colorado, a medical marijuana state at the time. 13 years ago, it was medical only. We didn't have recreational, we didn't have a hemp law, and so I thought, I wonder if I could, find someone to mimic what they're doing in Israel and Brazil and France and countries where it's
Wow.
legal for them to study this. And so I just set out, it was really just out of necessity or desperation or a mother's love for her kid to
Yeah.
find something.
Mhm.
When you're watching that amount of incredible suffering and it's your kid, I don't know how you know, give up. I mean, you just do the next thing, you just figure it out. And
I'm
so
just
I
so
started
amazed by the research that you did though. Like I think of the research I used to do on like Google. Like, well, this must work, but you're like, no, I'm finding research in Israel and Brazil. And like, you are it just says a lot about who you are as a person, Paige,
well,
like that you're,
I can call it like I'll say I was doing research and stuff, but it's not. I'm not a scientist. I'm a mom, and I'm not
Mhm.
doing any scientific data. It's not going to be reproducible. It's just anecdotal. But I
Mhm.
was charting everything we did, and
Mhm.
I got that dosing information from Israel. I got their study, and I wrote my own little mini clinical trial, I guess, if you will, for Charlotte, and went about
Wow.
finding someone to help me. And that's when I found the Stanley brothers, the 7 brothers who were running a medical marijuana operation in the state, they started helping their uncle with cancer. And they were just interested as well as what else was in the plant besides THC, which is delta
Mm.
9 THC,
Sure.
which is the part we're familiar that gets you high and has medicinal value as well. But at the time in the state of Colorado, it was like people were just getting that THC number higher and higher and higher, and no one was really
Mhm.
doing any information of what else is in this plant that could be beneficial. So we had to source this research out from other countries. And it was like,
Wow.
it was a lot of work. I mean, it was very difficult. She was 4. While somebody had written the law in the state of Colorado they'd written pediatrics into the law and they had written epilepsy into the medical marijuana law. No one was using that. No child, the end of life, was using
Yeah.
cannabis to treat
Right.
their system. So it was like I had lawyers, I had the attorney general, I had the governor, I had people, all of her epileptologists on these phone calls so that I didn't get arrested. Even though I was following the letter of the law, I was like, what are
Sure.
you gonna do? Take her out of my CPS was involved, Child Protective Services. They were threatening to remove my kid. And I'm like, "Look, you
Wow.
know. And
Wow.
imagine if you were the Stanley brothers, they're seeing this situation. Like, I'm telling you guys, I understand if you are a no, if you don't want to help, she's going to die. You'll probably be involved or blamed or you know what I mean? And this is gonna
Yeah.
Yeah.
anyway.
Huge risk for them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
totally risky, and I was willing to just kinda do it quietly and kind of just to see, what we could
Yeah.
find, share that information. Maybe someday I could help someone else. She was too far gone for this this hemp extract to help her. I mean, we're talking about hemp extract. It's like
Yeah.
essence of a flower that has no side effect, no high. It's not intoxicating, and so I knew it wasn't going to work.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
when you compare to the other drugs we've been on, I'm like, please. I mean,
right.
gosh, I mean,
I don't
those
know
are
if you
hard
guys have to
drugs.
take, like, if you've ever have a status seizure, a really prolonged seizure where you have to take, um, an emergency drug, like an emergency,
I got them all in the
seizure drug.
cabinet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
This
those
one's got
drugs,
a good record.
like,
Mhm.
some people are I don't know if you call it allergic, but Charlotte was very sensitive, so she
Ugh.
just
Oh.
stopped breathing, like, it would stop
Oh
her
my
heart, and
god.
if I opened the cupboard and gave that, emergency seizure drug, I'd have to begin life support
Oh
because
my
she stopped
God.
breathing, so it was like, do you just let it go? Do you
Yeah, what are
Yeah,
you
what do
supposed
you
to
do?
do? Literally
Yeah.
hands tied.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
So
my
Oh my
it
gosh.
gosh.
so you try all these, these options in Western medicine, but they didn't serve her. So that's why I started looking. I wasn't an activist. I was a military wife. I wasn't a cannabis user. It was like out of necessity and desperation. And that I started looking into this. And then I just sort of became an advocate because it was a success. So then what happened was we created this, we plugged Charlotte into the clinical trial. And I'm not I'm not a doctor or a researcher, but that's what it was. It was like a little ridiculous thing I was doing in my living room, that it should have been someone else. I should have been able to go and someone handed me a prescription. That would have been lovely. I wasn't trying to be a pioneer. I just was, I'm going to help my kid. I'm going to do whatever it takes. We were doing acupuncture. We were doing all kinds of stuff. So it's not that outrageous that we look to a plant source.
To a flower.
Yeah. So we formulated this testing, had very rigid criteria that I required for this. It can only have a very low margin of error, like a brand name pharmaceutical. It had to be grown organically. Anyway, it had really rigid criteria that they still adhere to this day. And I gave it to her. It had to put it in
so that it's the criteria you created that is still followed to this. That's okay. Wow. I didn't know
actually,
that.
They've
really
actually
dope.
made it a little bit more strict, even because.
But based off of your living room research.
I had to.
That's amazing. I'm just giving you props. I'm sorry. I'm just like, what? Like
you have to treat everything you try as if it's going to work. Like you have to, if a doctor prescribes you a drug and you can't afford more than one dose, you're probably not going to try it, because if it were to work, you can't have you have to go down every road, but you have to make sure you can continue. So it had to be repeatable exactly as it began. And I had to be able to afford it, and it couldn't change. And so those criteria were critical, and those criteria are why I'm still involved and why I'm relevant in Washington, D.C. is part of that. Like, while it's not just epilepsy anymore, who are finding success with CBD,
right?
It's relevant because there's a lot of people who aren't following that criteria, claim it was not a successful trial, right? To try to use it for their whatever they're using CBD for. Sure. And it's, you just don't know. Maybe it's just the wrong thing and it wasn't tested. Maybe the label's inaccurate, things like that. So anyway, we plugged her into the clinical trial. I put the oil into her feeding tube. She has a port in her stomach, and she stopped seizing. So she was having 50 seizures a day, tonic-clonic, grand mal seizures a day, 350 a week, consistently around the clock. She probably had a couple minutes, an hour where she was post-ictal or not seizing, and then it would just start up again. The hospital's like, you don't have to keep taking her, and there's nothing to do. We're just gonna do it this way. And watching her die, I put this in her stomach, and she stopped. She just totally stopped seizing. Not a single seizure for 7 days after her first dose of this.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've had a successful treatment where, and I'm charting everything. I'm very meticulous about how I was.
Oh, that's how my mom was.
I was going to say, I was like, there's even a lot of similarities between.
My mom charts my stuff and Landis's stuff. But
she keeps better track of my stuff than I do.
You
have the sweetest thing. Well, yeah.
She'd be like, you ate this, beforehand. I'm not a little, something's up here. And I'm like, okay, Mom, whatever. But nothing is more.
It's so sensitive. Like, what did you eat? What have you done differently in your lifestyle? Yep.
Nothing is more ferocious than a mother's love. She was just like,
cool.
It took 10 years. And then finally, once something worked, it was the same thing. She was just kind of like, okay, here's all your history. Here's why, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, yep, wouldn't be here without you for sure.
That's awesome. Because then when you go to your doctor, they want to know. Someone has to keep track of it.
Oh, they want to know everything.
Yeah. Good doctors do, by the way.
True.
Yeah.
Find a doctor that wants to know everything. Little PSA. Okay, sorry. Go. So we're 7 days seizure free after, after having an hour a day post-ictal and
Yeah.
just not having a seizure. I can't
It took
even.
me a while I had to see other people with a similar situation. Like I didn't believe, I
Sure.
thought it was her diet, or I thought I changed
Yep.
something else. There's no way this thing, if it wasn't powerful enough, it wasn't a strong enough drug. I mean, the stuff she was on would just knock her unconscious. There's no way this extract of a plant was doing anything. So
Yeah.
I think it was after I saw 100 other people with a similar, and it didn't work for everybody in the same way, obviously. It's not a cure for anything, but I saw 100 other kids with a similar situation, a similar response to CBD with their epilepsy. And then I was like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Like maybe it took a while, after
Yeah.
4 years of failure, medical failure. So anyway, so just to wrap this long story, because each part of the story is like a whole novel.
Oh, we
Yeah.
love it.
It was very difficult. It was just really difficult to get to get it legal, to get her a medical marijuana card, to find doctors to support this, to find people to make it. So what we did was I actually waited 18 months to find the right journalist, and we told the story. We waited a really long time because everyone wanted like a pot mom sensationalist, story about how, oh my gosh,
Oh,
she's giving her kid marijuana,
right.
and that just wasn't the story. And I
Right. They
wanted
wanted
more.
to spin it their own
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Which I
Yeah.
get. Like that's what media is, as long as you understand what you're digesting when you read the news, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I wanted the facts. I wanted it to be a doctor. I wanted a scientist to tell the story. So it was this neurosurgeon that ended up telling the story on CNN, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and he did a mini series of documentaries. I think they're doing 9 of them, and it was called Weed, and they came and filmed the whole thing. And we told that story, and now Charlotte's better at that point. So she started breathing room air. She started making eye contact with us. She started swallowing on her own. She started eating. We taught her how to walk again. I mean, she just stopped seizing, and it all came back. It all just started to come back. Everything she had lost for those first 4 years of her life. And so she actually went to school. So when that story came out in the news, people were like, I didn't realize how many people didn't have a treatment for their epilepsy. And people just had to decide, do I move to Colorado? Because again, this is a Schedule 1 drug. It was Colorado at the time. California was working on legislation. That was it. So you had to break the law to get it to Texas, let's say. You had to change the law, which that takes quite some time.
Yeah.
Or you had to move here, right, to Colorado. And then you couldn't leave. You had to get residency in Colorado if you wanted access to this. It couldn't leave the state. You couldn't leave the state with it. And you had to leave your family and move here. So people packed their cars prime time Sunday night. They watched this thing and came here to Colorado. And that's how sort of desperate or tragic these situations, like anything. It wasn't even a thought like, let's go. I want to try this. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No big deal. It's like no biggie. It's just hemp, right?
Yeah.
And so people came here, and the media called them medical hemp refugees. And it was like this exodus from states that had no intention of passing any kind of a hemp bill. And so they're like, I don't have time to wait. My kid's in a dire situation. So the first people that refugeed here were like really tough cases. They weren't, one seizure every 5 years, which is bad enough. But they were like medical, coming here in like a medical ambulance sort of situation to get them here. And so it was this weird like community, this weird movement that was unintentional and really heartfelt and amazing. People we connected and made friends for life with. They lived in my house, and it was
Oh my God.
it was really easy and obvious for me. The next step was to
Like
to
they
go
lived
back.
in your house. Can we just
Yeah, so-
pause?
Yeah.
They lived
I
in
will.
your house. Like you were like, medical refugees, epilepsy refugees. Yes, stay in my house. Like that. I think we just need to pause and just talk about how what an amazing person you are. Because we talked about like the amazing work you're doing as a mom, but then like the amazing work you're doing just for other moms and and dads and caretakers who are as desperate as you were. I mean, not
Well,
just
it's
walking
like you're looking
away.
in the mirror. It wasn't hard.
Yeah.
I'm not, Mother Teresa. It was just, I mean, it was just obvious and easy. I'm looking at myself. I'm looking at absolutely. And for me to complain, like, how come this didn't exist for Charlotte? I had to create this. I had to figure this out. For me to be allowed to complain
Right.
about that, I then had to go solve it for other people. So it was easy. It was like, I'm not allowed to complain that it didn't exist for me. I'm just going to do what I do unto others that I wish had existed instead
Mhm.
of complaining about it.
Oh,
And
that's
I
so
could.
beautiful. I'm sorry, but
Well,
that's just fucking
thanks.
beautiful. It
You would
is.
have done the same thing. It was effortless. It was actually, it is still actually an honor because how often in life do you get to do something that meaningful, that
Yeah.
actually can change
Totally.
a person's life. It was easy. It was
Yeah.
like, here, I got to see people take their first dose. I got to see them
Ugh.
stop seizing. It was like an
Wow.
honor. It
Man.
still is just a huge honor to even try to represent this politically. So anyway, so I was like, you have 48 hours, and then the next family's coming in, and then we'll help you get on your feet. We started the Realm of Caring, which is 501c3, and that was just initially just to help collect people, tell them how to get a residency, where to live, what to do, and now it's much more than that. And then I started to go back to those states and countries. People moved here from other countries. And we started the Coalition for Access Now, and that's a 501c4. And that's where I spend my time now is the executive director of that political work under the coalition.
Work is so amazing. And what you're doing is just very incredible. And I didn't realize how much it was needed and until I learned about it. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing like what it is you're doing now.
So it really is just an extension of the first states and countries we went to. So I would go
Okay.
back. Really, the initial goal was to just get these families out of my house. Like get them, I need them to
Yeah.
be able to move back to Georgia or Tennessee,
Yeah.
New
Right.
York, or wherever.
Mhm.
So I'm just kidding. They could, there was a
No, but
live
like
with me for a year, and anyway, so
wow. Yeah. No, well,
Wow.
for your sanity and for theirs too, right? Like
yes.
you need
Yeah.
to live with your family and
Well,
and then
some
like
of them had to like split up. So the breadwinners stayed in their home
Oh.
country, and the mom and the kid.
wow.
That's sexist, but it was usually the mom and the
Yeah.
child came to Colorado, and
Yeah.
it was like, this is crazy. This is hemp.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
crazy.
Right.
Take
Right.
ropes, and this is outrageous.
I
Like, come
do have to say, every time I hear the word hemp, I just picture a hemp necklace from like the 90s. I don't know why.
yeah, like old. I'm a rock climber. It's like old climbing ropes were made
Oh, that's
of.
much cooler than what I picture. Okay.
But this is different. This is an industrial, agricultural, hemp for paper, for textiles that we're talking about. It's medicinal
Right.
or
Right.
therapeutic hemp. Anyway, so I'm like, how hard could it be to go pass a hemp law? They just don't know. This is just new information. No one's anti-hemp. This isn't dangerous. This isn't causing any problems. They just don't. There's new information, and we can and then
Yeah.
you start digging into the history of why it was a Schedule I substance in the first place, and how effective that war on drugs is, and how hard it is to change someone's mind about something.
Yep.
And so I'm like, oh, I'll just pop down to Chile and pass a CBD hemp law down there. And it's like,
No big deal.
Yeah.
it's not that easy, and it's
Crazy,
controversial,
though.
and it's quite
Yeah.
dangerous and whatever. So I started going back to pass laws. The first laws we were blamed for, and still are, were too restrictive. They were CBD only. We went back and got what we could get done as fast as possible to help the most people possible. So I didn't feel like those families who were just using high CBD, low THC. So the definition of hemp is 0.3% THC or less in that
Okay.
plant is considered hemp legally. So as long as it has less than 0.3% THC, the intoxicating compound, it's classified as hemp.
Got
And
it.
so the
Okay.
first bills were like, we don't want to cultivate it, but you can possess it in our state. We don't want to know how you got it here because that's breaking drug trafficking, federal
Yeah.
and 2 states. You're breaking laws. but we'll let you have it here and we won't prosecute you for possession, and you can give it to your kid. And so those were blamed for being way too restrictive. It doesn't help enough people. And I just felt like the families using these high CBD hemp products shouldn't be held hostage by time because you want a recreational cannabis bill in Texas, which
Yeah.
isn't going to
Right.
happen. Right? No,
Mhm.
probably, maybe not even in my lifetime. But why should we
Right.
hold them hostage? They're just asking for this, and it's
Yep.
incremental approaches work best and politically. So
Yeah.
we did that and we got them home. And then look what happened in those states historically. Then they started passing more and broadening the reach. And so, but
Yep.
people were left out of those first early bills. And so it was difficult because you'd think everyone would be on board, but we're getting heat from both sides, the
Oh,
anti-cannabis,
God.
anti-hemp sentiment.
Right.
And then the pro-cannabis was like, no, that's not enough. And
It's not enough.
Oh gosh.
anyway,
It's like, oh God. It's I'm gonna quote my grandfather here, and he always said, "Slow change is lasting change." And I love that because I
Mhm.
just feel like you were saying, like when we're passing laws, when we're doing these things, and you know way more about this than I do, but that is proven what's kind of to work. So
well, it's just even like medically, you don't make large medical dosing changes with your
that's so
drug. It's
true.
just like everything works best
Yep.
for permanency when it's slow and incremental. It's just
Yeah.
boring and it's not as exciting, but that's just
That's very true.
certainly like in Washington, you see federally, it's very slow, thoughtful approaches. So the
Hmm.
state work happened so rapidly. We reached 26 states really fast that had passed some form, and none of the 26. I'm just saying 26 because that was like the government got involved when we were past halfway. So we're
Mhm.
almost all the way to 50 states. They're either implementing the bill, it was written, it was getting passed. Every state had something going on, and 26 were signed and done. The federal government came in and said, okay, we need to do something federally to make this line up with what the states are saying. The people are saying they're fine with this. It's obviously efficacious, so we're going to do something federally. They wrote the first federal bill, and that was back in the 114th Congress. And they named it after Charlotte and that company Charlotte's Web that was started to create that first extract. And that was, that it was like very Republican led but very bipartisan. And those early bills were, it's still what I'm finishing up, we're halfway there, but the first early bills were deschedule this. Remember, it's a Schedule 1 substance.
Right.
Like,
Mhm.
remove it
It's
from the
insane.
definition of marijuana. This is very different. It doesn't
Yep.
need
Yeah.
to be lumped in with this plant, this controversial plant that's going to take a bit longer to do something federally, legally, regulatory. So we can extract it. We can take hemp out of that definition. And then the second part of those early bills was it needs to be regulated as a dietary supplement. You can't just legalize it and then it's a free for all, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
they needed to regulate it. So we got the first half done with the farm bill, with an agricultural bill. They dealt with the definition of hemp and they descheduled. They just
Okay.
completely descheduled it. So it didn't get rescheduled as of 2 or 3 or 4. They just
Thank God.
descheduled it, removed
Yeah.
it from cannabis. Now it's on its own, but now it's in limbo and it never got regulated. The farm bill doesn't have jurisdiction to regulate this, to tell the FDA what to do. So what I'm working on now in Washington is just the second part of those early bills. Like my language is exactly the same. Nothing's changed, but we were halfway there, and it needs regulation. So it
Yeah.
should be a dietary supplement. It should be a vitamin. It should be like melatonin. It should be over the counter. And it is, and there's companies doing this, but it isn't, there's no regulation. So now there's 4,000 brands is what I'm hearing. There's
Wow.
45 million Americans self-identify as taking a daily CBD dose. And that's probably
Wow.
an underestimate. And that's
Yeah.
that's every day. That's a person who takes it every day for whatever reason that they may. And so it's obviously, the market has spoken. This isn't going away. It's
Totally.
working. And some of those 4,000 companies aren't operating as a dietary, the majority, probably 3,900 are not operating as a dietary supplement because it isn't. But we should have,
Yeah.
honest labeling what's in your bottle, and we should have
Right.
independent testing. Like, you're not testing your own stuff.
Yeah.
There's honesty and transparency, and we just want that information. So that's it. It's like the really unsexy, boring part of this whole like these whole 13 years is like the regulatory stuff, but it still isn't done yet. So I know everyone's moved on to bigger things with cannabis and psychedelics and other medicinal qualities of other things, but this part isn't done yet. I vowed to continue it and like see this through. So that's what I'm working.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So when you talk about regulation, you mean like the way like, you know, food is regulated that's sold, and beer, and I don't know, others. Like it's just basically like the basic regulation is not happening with CBD.
So the FDA, the FDA can regulate many, many, many things. They're very busy, and that's a government agency that
they are very busy.
And whether they're going to enforce the rules, because it's expensive and time consuming, but it certainly should have some rules, right? It should have labeling requirements and that sort of thing. And so no one's trying to shut down the industry. In fact, this whole extract, this whole category wouldn't exist if there wasn't a profitable industry. So we're trying to make it healthy, profitable. The Coalition for Access Now represents the consumer. So I'm not representing that exists. There's industry groups that want to fight over how it's regulated. They want to fight over labeling. They want to fight against pharmaceutical companies who are making CBD extracts, who can't compete with hemp growing in a field, right? So they're fighting with each other. But I just feel like the most underrepresented voice is the consumer, the customer, and I want to do this for them. Again, like I'm not allowed to complain. This didn't exist for my kid if I'm not willing to do the work to create this, you know, structure for other people to have access. So I represent the consumer so they have safe access, and that's just what I've been doing for 13 years, and I'll continue to do this until it's done.
Well, we appreciate you so much, Paige, for this. And like, I just think too how insane it is, because like, and Lexi, you might be too young for this, but Paige, do you remember when McDonald's started to have like, they had to put their nutrition facts like on, like all of a sudden you walk into McDonald's and you're like, oh, that's like 900 million calories, you know, like, and they like have to put their nutrition facts, and that has to be
Well,
regulated.
you don't strike
like
me
that's
as
the only
like
McDonald's I know.
No clue. With my epilepsy brain, no.
Oh no, you know, I'm not, but it's, you know, it's to get the soft serve ice cream cone is a really fucking awesome treat. I'm just gonna say it's like $2 and so good. But yeah, it just strikes me as so crazy that like it's like we're focusing on that, but how is this going uncharted, you know, and I don't know, just being unnoticed. And
now like don't you go into some restaurants and maybe I didn't want to know how many calories.
Yes,
right,
100%.
Yes.
I'm like, don't ruin my cheeseburger. I had already committed to it. I knew I was going to eat it. I didn't need to know what was in it. Yeah,
exactly.
But if you're taking this as a health product, you should know. You should know what's in it. And if you don't, I understand that maybe some people don't care about the milligrams. How I treated a high medical situation with child pediatric epilepsy. I needed to know to the you know decimal how many milligrams she was getting. That's not what this is. It can be a supplement. So nowadays it's I'm no longer representing only pediatric epilepsy. That was how it started. That was the majority. Now it's like probably by a lot the smallest population who use. See, they still exist and they're growing, but it's the smallest percentage of the population who uses CBD. It's veterans, it's seniors, and it's athletes. Yep. So some of the sports teams are partnering with companies because they're dealing with pain, opioid crisis from surgeries. These guys are playing injured, and their options are very few for pain. And so they're addicted to opioids.
Yeah.
And that's their reason for getting involved. So Major League Baseball is an example. They partnered with Charlotte's Web, who is they make extract. And their science guys, their chief science officers are training the trainers on how to teach the players on how much to take and what products to take.
Oh,
And so
cool.
try
So
this full
cool.
circle. So one of the reasons they were able to partner and was they got an NSF certification. So that's the highest level of certification a product can have is this
Okay.
really rigid, expensive
Okay.
criteria to get NSF certified. I think they test
Sure.
for 400 things. So if you want to make some kind of orange juice, right? That's some supplement extract from oranges, and you want to get an NSF certification, you have to have your lab audited and you have to go through this really stringent process. And so that company was able to get NSF certification. And one of the reasons why is because they followed that rigid criteria that I required for a dying medical patient. That isn't necessary if you want to take CBD for sleep. Maybe you don't care about that rigidness, and maybe that's
Sure.
not of interest to you, but that allowed them to get that certification. And that certification allows them to partner with larger organizations that do care what their players are getting, these million dollar players. So anyway,
Wow.
some people
Paige.
still do care what's in this stuff, right?
Well, yeah,
Mhm.
right. I think there's a lot of focus too on what you put in your body right now. Like,
It should
what am
be.
I putting
Yeah.
in my body? What is, everyone kind of wants to be on track with that. It seems like that seems to be more of a trend. But also, just quick, isn't that also why you threw out the first pitch at a Yankees game? I
Did you
just,
see that?
I
Did
just
you
want
see
to
my
drop.
pitch? I landed it.
Oh, yes.
Wow. That was really cool. And everyone's like, oh, wow, that must have been, it was really validating to have come from law enforcement being involved in what are you giving your child? What are you doing? Marijuana? No, to come from that to being at Yankee Stadium at the playoffs
Ugh,
was sort of really full circle that this is a valid thing.
totally.
We are not trying to be activists or do anything crazy or do anything a fringe
Right.
here. This is
Yeah.
so it was
Right.
very important. It was like a heavy moment for me for that
Yeah,
reason.
I believe
I
it.
can imagine. My
Yeah.
Yeah.
gosh.
And so as far as now we know you're on the hill a lot. We like to say that because it sounds cool because it's like, it's on the hill. I don't really know exactly what that means, except you're in DC doing cool shit.
Yeah, you should come to Washington and lobby with me. So I'm
Sure.
headed back to DC on Monday. I go every month and do meetings to get co-sponsors on the bill. So the bill we're working on is HR 1629.
Okay.
And it's basically, it's just like I said, it's the last 50%. It has Congress is mandating the FDA regulate CBD as a dietary supplement. And so, and that would take care of labeling and testing. And it's really quite simple. It's going to probably, we're hoping to get this done this year and kind of wrap this up. So there's a healthy, safe industry where people have access. That's it. It's like,
that's awesome.
yes, there's access right now, but there's
Right.
some crap out there. Let's just
Sure.
say.
Sure. Totally. And so we invite all of our visitors to visit coalitionforaccessnow.org to check out what Paige is doing. It's just amazing work. Paige, thank you so much for being here and chatting with us about this. This has just been
this is
like
outstanding.
I know. I feel like I'm gonna need a nap because like I'm so overwhelmed by
I get
your
that a
amazing
lot.
work. No, not in a,
Not
not in
clear
a
out a room.
negative way. And like I either need to go to a dance party or take a nap because this is just amazing work.